Man, I am really hungry. I should probably make a giant slab of a sandwich for lunch. Let's see. Ooh, a tasty Spider-Man #1.
West Coast Avengers, eating all my comic books.
Welcome back. Another week of the West Coast Avengers. I know you've been here the whole time. You're in my apartment right now. I'm back. I traveled across the country. I was working in Connecticut this past weekend, but we'll get to the haul next week. This week, I got a special episode. As I have told you over and over and over.
Everybody, Todd McFarlane here, and
when you see a Todd McFarlane book, you buy a Todd McFarlane book. That's been my motto since I've been collecting since I was a kid. I am a pure 90s kid, born in 1979, so I turned 11 in 1990, just as Todd McFarlane blows up with this huge book after having his Amazing Spider-Man run. He has this Adjective-less Spider-Man. This comes out just a couple months before I turn 11. I had already been familiar with who he was, but this put everything over the top. This year, I made it a point to finish the collection of everything that he penciled and inked outside of Image Comics. So Marvel, DC, Epic, everything he's done before Spawn came out. That's a whole other beast, because once Image Comics gets formed, he's doing Spawn, he's doing some pinups and covers and other Image books, and then Spawn fluctuates from having his art to Greg Capullo to Jason Shawn Alexander. And so that's for a later date. There's a couple other things, his art outside of comics, like the artwork for Corn's Follow the Leader. I'm gonna start off with what I would say is the Bible, The Art of Todd McFarlane, The Devil's in the Details. This hardcover book was released in 2012 with a foreword by Stan Lee, and it goes through his entire life as an artist. And so you get to see original art when he was a kid all the way up to the present of 2012. I got this at Midtown Comics and they did a signing with him. So as you can see, my book is signed on the first page. I don't know if the hardcover is still in print, but they do make a soft cover and it's just beautiful. And this is the Bible. This will tell you everything you need to know about his art, about him, about his rejection letters. He's got a great story. He's worked his way up to the top. I started collecting comics. I think I picked up Amazing Spider-Man 326. It was somewhere in that late part of the Amazing Spider-Man run, but I fell in love. I was like, what is this? This is like nothing I'd ever seen before. Spider-Man looked like a creepy little bug. And the way he just drew everybody, it was the opposite of everything that came before it. I mean, there are some influences you can pick out in other artists, but when it comes to Spider-Man, you look at Romita and guys like that, and then you look at Todd and went, whoa. As the years went on, I made sure I got all the Amazing Spider-Man stuff. I picked up some other books. I never really dove into the stuff that predated the Amazing Spider-Mans, because I followed Amazing Spider-Man to the main Adjective-less Spider-Man book. He's got a nice 5 to 8 year chunk of work that predates that. So we're gonna go through everything. Everything in this box is Todd McFarlane. I don't think I've paid more than $20 for a single book in this box. Maybe I paid $30 back in 1995 or whatever, but a lot of it I found at comic book stores this year and antique malls and garage sales. And some of it I've just had since I was a youngin'. Infinity Inc. This is the first series that Todd was on in DC in 1985. Roy Thomas was writing Infinity Inc. and they brought Todd along. So this is number 13. This is officially the first DC Comics published artwork of Todd McFarlane, but it's not until the last page. There is a pinup right there in the last page. Roy Thomas basically introducing him to the comic book world. Todd McFarlane will be joining us. And here's the first published artwork of Todd McFarlane in DC Comics from April of 1985. And Todd would go on to do full run, and they introduce Mr. Bones in issue 16, which is just a great design. Admittedly, I haven't read the Infinity Inc. run. I've looked through a lot of it, but I haven't actually sat down and read it. But the artwork's just beautiful. You can see Todd getting better in these 20 plus issues. And you read through these books, and if you're just looking at the artwork, you see that signature Todd work, you see his side profiles and his crazy weird layouts, and then it tightens up, continues showing these books off. You can usually get these for a couple bucks at stores. Some comic stores will put them out for $3 or $4. But if you dig through those dollar bins, you're gonna find half this run. There's only like 1 or 2 of these that are worth money. You know, if you're a fan, or if you're not, or if you want to just check out the earliest work, this is the cheapest stuff you can get. I could tell you I probably put this entire run together for less than $100. It goes from issue 13 through 37 and 2 annuals. So you're only looking at about 25 books. And then the 2 annuals to go along with it. That's the little tip I can say, is that you check the dollar bins and you'll find Infinity Inc. It will have Todd's name right on the top. We'll move on. You got Invasion Book 1 and 2, which was a big crossover book involving the whole DC universe. It's not the best, but it's fun to look through for the artwork. And he did not do book 3. But anyway, these are always easy to find. Never pay more than $5 for these books unless they're in like pristine condition. They are 80 pages and they're square bound. I have found more than my fair share of copies of these in a dollar bin. Superman Gallery. It's just a pinup book from 1993. Different artists, Neil Adams, Mobius. Shout outs to Bernie Wrightson on this one. Todd has a pinup in here, which is from one of the Invasion books, but I just had to have this because it's a completist thing. This is probably my favorite, quite unknown piece of Todd McFarlane art. Sandman number 50. We all know the history between Todd and Neil Gaiman is not a great one, but this is pre-lawsuit, all that stuff. So June 1993, Sandman number 50 has a couple of pinups in the back, and I had never seen this until just this year, but check that out. It's a great Todd McFarlane pinup of Morpheus. It's not a hard book to find, Sandman number 50. I imagine they're going to become a little bit harder to find next year. This would probably be considered the second most expensive book in Todd's DC run, All-Star Squadron number 47. I'm not sure why it's expensive. Maybe it's the Dr. Fate cover. I don't think it's very easy to find. I've only seen this book once, and obviously I had to buy it, and that was very recently. Anyway, All-Star Squadron number 47, a must pick up if you do see it. Now, as we close out with the DC, this is a 4-part series that Todd only did 3 parts of, and it's Batman Year 2. So it's Detective Comics number 576, 577, 578. Interiors and covers done by Todd, some of the best Batman artwork I had ever seen, and still continues to this day to be some of the best. Now you're wondering, does he have it? Batman 423, amazing, iconic Batman cover. But not just that, I have a second copy of Batman 423. Is the second print, signed by Todd and Jim Starlin. Both autographs I got in person. I've met Todd a handful of times, and we'll get to that. And Jim Starlin I met a few years ago in Chicago. Just this cover. Words. I don't have them. Everybody agrees that this is one of the greatest Batman covers of all time. Iconic, to say the least. Yeah. So I have my 2 copies, and I'm very happy about that. So this one is something I learned about 10, 15 years ago. This is Coyote number 11. Coyote number 11 is a historic comic. This contains the first published artwork from Todd McFarlane. After he had sent so many submission letters to Marvel and got rejected and rejected and rejected. And this is from March of 1985. And it was the first time Todd's artwork was published. I bought this years ago and got it signed by Todd. And Todd opened to his first page of published art and signed it there. So this is a beautiful treasure to have. Todd's story was published in 4 parts. In Coyote, so you got 11, and Coyote 12, Coyote 13, which features the first ever published cover of Todd, and closing it out, Coyote number 14. So this was published under Epic, was another banner label for Marvel. You gotta live by the words. When you see McFarlane, you buy McFarlane. Here's another one. The Olympians number 1, published by Epic Comics in 1991. Todd just does the cover. I don't know much about this at all. The cover's great. Obviously, Todd, most known for his work at Marvel. We will get to the Amazing Spider-Man stuff, but I want to show you some of the one-shot covers and weird things that he's done. Starting with, number 3, Spider-Ham cover. Todd does a 2-page story. It's actually a spoof of Batman and the Joker. Surprised that they didn't get sued for it, but when you see this one, it's pretty cheap, so pick it up. Remember that cover. Todd also inked this Jim Valentino cover for Guardians of the Galaxy. Another one that kind of flew under the radar for me until this year. He also did a lot of ink jobs with Rob Liefeld on New Mutants and a couple on X Factor, and I'll get to those. One of the more iconic covers that people are now discovering is Conan the Barbarian 241, which is a cover by Todd. No interiors, just cover. It's hard to find this one in really good condition. It was in 1991. and Marvel was using the absolute worst paper on some of these comics. So if you do find one in really good condition, grab it. It's worth quite a bit of money. Along with that is Quasar number 14, which is another Todd cover. Sometimes I absolutely love these covers, and sometimes I don't. And it's weird. It depends on the day that I look at them. They're kind of basic compositions, but they're still fucking cool. And I like them today. So Conan 241 and Quasar 14. So here we have one from the Marvel New Universe. I don't know exactly how they got Todd to do this. Spitfire and the Troubleshooters number 4. Cover's not done by Todd, but the interiors are 100% Todd. This is usually a dollar bin score. I don't think you're gonna have a problem finding this. They don't sell well, and most people don't know because he didn't do the cover. Here's a great one. Marvel Comics Presents number 32. Kitty Pryde cover done by Todd. And if you're familiar with Marvel Comics Presents, you know that most covers are wraparound covers. So check this out. Todd doing a couple of characters that he would normally not do, including a side profile of the Black Panther, Solo, and Sunfire. So those are two that you need to just, if you're really looking to collect everything, time to make a list. Here is X Factor number 50. So this is Todd doing the inks for Rob Liefeld's pencils. I love this cover. I love the colors. I love everything about it. Todd and Rob are two of my favorite artists of all time. So this one's an easy one to get. It's usually between $2 and $5. Most people don't even notice it. Here's one that's becoming increasingly hard to find and more expensive, I should say. G.I. Joe number 60, which is from the Marvel Comics line in the 80s. Mike Zeck did the cover, but Todd did the full interiors of this. It's very confusing too. There's some of these covers that look exactly the same with the same color and almost the same kind of layout. This is the one you need to get. This is the only one he ever did. As well, another one that's tough to find. Marvel Age number 90 is actually a pretty significant book. This is the first preview, Spider-Man number 1. That book, it's just become somewhat of a key issue. So this was another significant thing that I finished putting together this year. Todd's first ongoing book with Marvel was The Incredible Hulk. Don't need to tell you anything about that character. We all know. If you're looking to read some of it without owning the single issues, you can somehow find this Ground Zero trade paperback. I know it's probably out of print, but it shouldn't be too expensive. But this goes through at least half of Todd's run, plus that cover. We're gonna see that very soon. Lucky for me, I have owned the most expensive of the Todd Hulk issues since I was a kid, but tracking down some of this was pretty tough because they are going up in price. So you start with 330, the first Todd McFarlane Hulk, into 331, 332, 333, 334, and he didn't do covers on a lot of these until a little bit later. And then you skip an issue and you go 336, 337, 338, 339. But the one we always associate Todd with, 340. Now let's take a minute to admire the absolute fucking beauty of this cover. You got Wolverine popping the claws, and you got the Hulk with his reflection in the claws. This book, or as long as I've been collecting, has always been worth money. This book has now finally jumped to one of the more expensive books that have come out in the last 40 years of Marvel Comics, and for a good reason. Look at that cover. And this is when Todd takes over the cover duties too. So you got 341, 342, 343, doing the Amazing Spider-Man 300 on this Hulk 344, another iconic cover, 345. And after Todd was done penciling every issue of Hulk, on 346, his buddy Eric Larson took over, but McFarlane inked the cover. And so it's a combo of Eric and Todd, and what a hell of a combo that is. You've got 330 through 346 minus one issue. It's expensive to put this together, mostly because of this issue. God, look at that beauty. Here's actually one of the most unique things that took me a long time to track down. A Marvel pull-out poster book, all Todd McFarlane art. I had one of these when I was younger, and I had put all these posters up on my wall. I was trying to track this down for a while, and it's always been like 30, 40 bucks. First road trip that me and other Dave took, I found this in an antique mall for $5. Got some iconic Spider-Man things in there, more iconic Spider-Man things. This one, that's a great image. Take the posters out of one and put them back up on your wall. I'll throw this out there too. New Mutants number 87. Iconic for several reasons. Number one, it's the first appearance of Cable. We all know and love Cable, or don't. And number two, it's inked cover from Todd, and the pencils are from Rob Liefeld. So Rob created Cable along with Louise Simonson, and Todd has a hand in the first ever art of Cable. Hey bud, Todd McFarlane here. King Spawn #1's delayed, but here's the good news. I got figures coming out. We're gonna move on to what Todd's most known for, and that's the webhead himself, Spider-Man. We all know Todd did Amazing Spider-Man. Todd went from Amazing Spider-Man to the Adjective-less Spider-Man. But there's plenty of other Spider-Man stuff that Todd did. We're gonna start with this one. It's an anti-drug comic called Skating on Thin Ice. Todd just does the cover, but it's kind of a classic cover in my eyes. I'm a huge hockey fan, so you got the kid wearing the Wayne Gretzky Edmonton Oilers jersey. There's a lot of weird stuff going on in here that's anti-drug. Kids don't do drugs until you're old enough. It was a $1 book. It can be found in several dollar bins if you look hard enough. Either way, worth it. Great cover. Another little hidden gem that is an interior only. Well, partially an interior only. You can see on the cover the Spectacular Spider-Man Annual number 10. There's a Prowler done by Todd. Todd does a standalone story in here called Prowler and Pale Reflection. Spectacular Spider-Man Annual number 10. Some hardcore fans know, some don't. Todd did a run of covers for Marvel Tales, just classic Spider-Man stories reprinted with new covers to make them all nice and pretty. So we start with 223, typical cover of Spider-Man and one of Doc Ock's tentacles. Marvel Tales 224, full Doc Ock cover. 225 with the death of Captain Stacy. 226, it's just a classic Spidey cover. And then you start getting into the team-ups with different X-Men. 227 features a team-up with Iceman. 228 features the Angel. Then 229 features Angel and Iceman. And then we jump into 230 with Dazzler. 231 with Paladin. 232 with Dazzler. This is one of my favorite covers. But the best of the best is his X-Men covers. 233, classic X-Men. 234, menacing X-Men in the back. Ooh. 235 with the new X-Men, including Wolverine. This would be his first Wolverine cover. 236, Wolverine and Storm. 237, Colossus and Nightcrawler. This is another classic one. 238 with Juggernaut. And the final one he did was Beast, 239. So these unfortunately have jumped up in price. You can find some ones that are not in great condition in dollar bins. Some of them are in bad condition. I've seen some of these covers going for upwards of 15, 25 bucks, which I think is kind of ludicrous, but can't judge because I love Todd and I think that all of his artwork is premium. This is 95% of everything he's done outside of Image. Maybe I'll cut that. Maybe I'll cut everything. So here's Amazing Spider-Man 350. So this was after Todd had already left Amazing Spider-Man and Eric Larson took over. The last page features a pinup. Spidey, drawn half by Eric Larson and half by Todd McFarlane. This is one of the coolest pieces of art that Marvel's ever published in my lifetime. And I think this is a super underrated gem. This is just a cool little comic book magazine, Amazing Heroes number 179. He did two covers. One is this iconic Spider-Man one, and one is with Captain America and Wolverine. My buddy actually is giving that to me this week, so maybe I'll cut that in there. Boom, look at that editing job. I got this yesterday. Thanks, Joe. After Amazing Spider-Man, he wanted to do his own book that he could write, illustrate, and be fully in charge of. Marvel gave that to him. Spider-Man #1 went to sell millions of copies, and it was the most successful comic book of the time, only to be bested by X-Men #1 by Jim Lee soon thereafter. I think this is Todd's most iconic cover, if we're talking how much it's influenced in the comic book world and the art world in general. This book came polybagged. Most people kept theirs in the bag thinking it was going to be worth more money, which it was at a time. But then as the years went on, people realized that that bag was damaging the comic. So you have your regular cover, which you have your gold cover. This is the regular version. This is the newsstand Walmart version. And then you have your silver cover and your most recent reprint. Yes, I've gone a little crazy. I have a lot of different covers to this. But like I said, it's iconic. So running through it, the first storyline, you got #2 and #3. And #4, Great Lizard cover, and #5. This was a grittier Spider-Man comic. This is kind of like Todd's, I'm gonna do something like Spawn, but with a Marvel character before Spawn exists. So that's the first storyline, Torment, which is 1 through 5. And then he did a two-parter with the Hobgoblin and Ghost Rider. And it was great because you get to see Todd draw all of these characters. He was with Marvel for such a short period of time, and all of his illustrations, all of his drawings are iconic, so you want to see him tackle as many characters as you could. So then you go into my favorite storyline, Perceptions, where Spider-Man goes to Canada, and surprise, surprise, Todd's Canadian, and hunts a child killer along with Wolverine. Todd had not drawn Wolverine in a regular book yet. As a kid who loved Wolverine, yes, I get to see Todd draw Wolverine. This is a pretty controversial storyline because it dealt with a child killer. I still think it's one of the better storylines to come out of Marvel in the 90s. And so there's number 12, which is my favorite Todd Wolverine cover, so much so that I had him sign one. Todd is one of the nicest people I've ever met, period. I've met him 5 or 6 times, and in situations where there wasn't a lot of people around, and he will just sit and talk. Had a couple of half-hour conversations with him. I grew up a huge hockey fan. Todd is a well-known hockey fan, used to own a piece of the Edmonton Oilers. He's just a very personable guy, and he wants to know what you think about the things that he's involved in. Not in an annoying way, but just he'll chat with you and pick your brain. And closing out the Adjective-less Spider-Man, I've done a little bit about this before, but Todd used his own iconic cover to draw another iconic cover of Spider-Man in the black costume. We skip issue 15, and we have 16, which would officially be Todd's last issue. It is a full horizontal book, and let me show you the reason why Todd left Marvel over a censorship issue. He didn't want to be part of that corporate machine that Marvel is. Fully horizontal, goes to stab Juggernaut with the sword in the eye, and Todd drew it, but then Marvel edited the panel out. As you can see, the sword's coming in, and then it's just blood. And Todd was so incensed by the fact that he was censored, he left. And I'm sure there was a lot of other reasons. Todd definitely cites that as the beginning of the end. And he never worked with Marvel after that. You know, some people like to stick to their convictions. Can't knock that. Amazing Spider-Man. We all know that Todd's responsible for some of the most iconic images of Spider-Man, some of the most iconic covers, and partially created the most iconic villain in the last 40 years of comic books, Venom. So we start with Amazing Spider-Man number 298. First cover, first artwork of Todd on Amazing Spider-Man, and a cameo of Eddie Brock, who is Venom. Spider-Man number 299. It's the first full image of Venom in the last page. It's considered a cameo and not the first full appearance. Amazing Spider-Man number 300. The first appearance of Venom, and just an iconic book all around. I've had this book in my collection since I was probably 14 or 15. I don't remember what I paid for it, but it's a fraction of what it's worth today. These books in a graded form can go for about $7,000 in a 9.8. This one is in really good condition. We continue with 301. 302, boom dap doom. What? 303, the first cover he did with Sandman. 304, 305 with a Prowler cover. Check out 306. That is an homage. Superman Action Comics #1, where he's holding up the Superman. Sienkiewicz. 307, Chameleon cover. 308, 309, 310. Pretty cool covers. Then we get to cover number 311. Amber is the color of your energy. Mysterio cover. This is my favorite cover from this run. 100%. No doubt about it. I just love this cover. There's so much going on in here with Spider-Man and the reflection of Mysterio's helmet and just the line design. Gotta check that cover out. Put it in front of your face. I would say this is one of my other favorite covers. Number 312 with the Green Goblin and Hobgoblin. This one is one I've owned for a long time, and I probably spent about $25 on a really great copy when I was younger just because I love that cover. I think this is one of the more iconic covers of the run, number 313 with the lizard. Just brutal looking cover, right? And he makes the lizard look so vicious. This is one I've never been able to take my eyes off of, and you can see why. Number 314, and then you've got number 315 with the Hydro Man. This actually was the first Todd McFarlane book I ever owned. Whoa, look at that. It's iconic in my heart. And then you come to what has become one of the more sought after covers, which I got autographed. Amazing Spider-Man number 316, the first full Venom cover. This book was always worth a little bit of money. If each book was worth 10, this was worth 20. But over the course of the last couple of years, this has become several $100s. I have 2 of them. One is actually on its way to CGC to get graded, but this one I got signed myself, and I'm never going to get rid of it. So to go along with that, I've got 317, which is also a great cover of the symbiote attacking Spider-Man. 318 is a great Scorpion cover. Always loved it. I love the way that the green pops up on the cover. I think it stands out. So at this time, Todd McFarlane was inking his own work, so it just looks as good as it ever will. 319, also Rhino and Scorpion and Justin Hammer on the cover. Fantastic cover. This summer, I was at a garage sale where I was getting these for $1 each, and I upgraded all my copies to near mint across the board. So then we get to 320, which is the beginning of the assassination plot. So that's 320 with Paladin, 321 with Paladin and Silver Sable. A pretty cool cover for 322. Iconic cover, number 323 with Captain America. That's the only time in Marvel Comics that he's drawn Captain America. He's drawn Captain America in other publications, including Amazing Heroes, but this is the only Marvel Comics cover that he had done with Captain America. Another great villain that Todd drew. On 324, you've got Sabretooth. And closing out the assassination plot, number 325, my favorite cover of this storyline, number 325, the Red Skull, burning Washington. Just a great cover. And closing out the Amazing Spider-Man run. Some people say it's their favorite cover. It's definitely my top 5. Number 328, which was the last Amazing Spider-Man that Todd had illustrated, with the Gray Hulk getting punched through the title by Spider-Man when he had his cosmic powers. It's one that I think everybody needs to have. So the biggest thing in my collection, period, would be something that I got the last time that I met Todd in New York, which was at a signing at the NHL store. Fortunately for me, not a lot of people showed up to the signing. I used to work in Manhattan, so I left work and I brought a bunch of things to get signed, and all you had to do was buy one of the new NHL McFarlane toys and you can get stuff signed. And so I got up to Todd and I talked to him for a little bit and I just thanked him for everything, and I said, hey, look, not a lot of people are around right now. If I stuck around until you finished this line, there was maybe 10 people online. He said, would you do a sketch? And previous to this, I had met Todd and I had asked him to do a sketch, and he said, oh, I don't do sketches. And he signed like a comic book backing board and then like drew a little spider. He was with his son. He looked at him, he said, do you mind if we stick around? His son's like, no. And Todd asked me, what would you like me to draw? And I said, how about Venom? Boom. He sat there for a half hour drawing this for me. I was speechless. Like, for the first couple of minutes, I didn't know what to say. Oh, that's amazing. I was with 2 friends and we were just kind of like, holy shit, he's doing this. I don't even know what to say about this besides how fucking cool is this Venom box. I almost asked him to draw Spider-Man. I've always enjoyed Venom as a character, but I'm a villain person. That sounds bad. I'm not a bad guy. I just love villains. I love villains that are drenched in black. Todd did this for me in, I'd say, about 2012. I was fortunate enough to get that. I consider myself lucky. So that'll do it for this week. I wanted to just do a deep dive into McFarlane. I said I still have a couple books to get. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles number 50 has a McFarlane pinup. There's a DC Who's Who with a McFarlane cover, and then I'm going to work on the Image stuff. I have a decent amount of Spawn and some of his other variant covers for Image. That's going to take a lot more time. I'd appreciate it if there's any questions you have about McFarlane books, or you want to just throw a comment down below as well. If there's something that you know of that I don't have, please put that in the comments down below. I just want to talk about McFarlane. He's my favorite artist. He's the reason I collect comics. He's the reason I read comics. I can trace him back to the reason why I love all illustrated art. Comment down below, like, follow, subscribe. Thanks for being on this journey so far with me. Please check out the Instagram. I do live claim sales on Instagram, and fear not, there will be some guests coming up in future episodes as I can plan that out. As always, keep digging.
Everybody, Todd McFarlane here, and...
Hey bud, this is Todd McFarlane. Buy some Spawn. Don't give any money to Marvel.